welcome everyone to the budget meeting on February 20th. Roll call, Councillor Kennis is absent. Councillor Brennan has his proxy. Councillor Pelkman is absent. Councillor Palmer has his proxy. I have a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Wilsey, second by Councillor Tippel. All in favor? Opposed if any? Carried. Are there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. This evening we're going to deal with three operating budgets: building and planning, legal and legislative, and economic development. If we get, because we do have a council meeting later, I do want to give people time in between the two meetings. If we do get time, we'll deal with the staffing, the manpower planning report. I know that on the docket was the potential of starting to look at a community services capital budget, but I think in the interest of time and to give it a good fulsome discussion, we may defer the start of that till tomorrow, because tomorrow we have time after if necessary, so we give it a full amount of time. So motion that to receive the reports first. Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Wilsey. All in favor? Opposed if any? Carried. So we'll start this evening with Building and Planning Director. Off your operating budget. Sorry. Sure. Start with Director of Finance.
Thank you. So it's just, I don't want to spend a lot of time, but just want to sort of update you on sort of what's in front of you on this round. So what we've done is, in the Finance Department, updated all of the 2023 year-end numbers. So those are now, as of our last check run. So now we're working through getting ready for the auditors. So those numbers are there. Obviously, depending on discussions with the auditors, those numbers can still move a bit, but for the most part, that's our expenses to the end of 2023. So that's been updated. The other thing is, you'll notice in the covering report, excuse me, there was a couple of departments where some changes were made, and the reasons for those changes are listed there. And some of those came during our discussions previously. Some are discussions that have happened since those as well. So that's been updated. The other piece I guess I'll draw your attention to is the operations. With those changes, we've decreased the amount of taxation slightly. We're still, if you round it out to one decimal place, still sitting in the 8, but we're down probably closer to a 7.6 or so on that, on the operations side. For capital, one of the things with capital is everything is now sort of been whittled through on the first pass. So that's sitting in front of you, and capital, as you can see, we're a 7.5 million increase in taxation dollars, which equates to about a 38% increase in taxation. So there's still some work to be had there. The last piece on that report that I'll draw your attention to is there is a request for the breakdown in the assessment by ward. So that has been provided. Those numbers are from MPAC, having to break down through the MPAC roll that they send out. So that's been finalized there for you. Looking at the assessment on that. Other than that, I think that's sort of just brings you up to speed on where things are at. We've also included, you'll notice, all of the capital business plan pieces for the community services and EPW. Those have been included so you can sort of see a better description of the projects that are moving, at least proposed. So with that, I'll pass it over to Councillor Huff unless there's some questions.
I have one question. I was going to save this for tomorrow night, but I did talk to the CAO about this. There's a $5 million surplus showing Could you break that down? I'm curious, is that an operating surplus or is that capital that's been, could you just comment where that surplus is coming from?
So that surplus is based on the unaudited operating. So that's our operating surplus, doesn't include any of the capital. So actually the breakdown I can look into and provide where it all flows from, but I don't have that number. Sorry, yes. And the other thing with that, just Lindsay's brought to my attention as well, so that's based on cash. So that doesn't include all of our amortization and stuff. Those numbers come out as well. So, but we don't budget for amortization, so though, just so you're aware, that 5.2, but I can, if council so chooses, I'm more than happy to serve. It won't be for tomorrow night, unfortunately, but I can circulate an actual breakdown. You can see it actually in the detail if you wanted to. Each of the the operating sheets that are attached has the who's got surpluses and who has deficits.
Any questions? Councillor Wilsey.
I'm going to try to add to that. Maybe I can hopefully clarify what you're asking for. So out of that 4 million, there are surpluses, and I don't know if, as far as council, what's passed is passed. I don't know if it really matters which department had much, and who had $10 and who had $100. I don't care that much about that. I think what we're trying to find out is what's going to be spent on capital, how much of that is going to be going into reserves. That I think is like the overall breakdown is just where that 4 million is going to go after last year. If it's going into pay for capital projects or some of it's going to reserves, just where that's going to go is I think maybe what the mayor can clarify, but that's kind of what I would like to see. I don't know if we're speaking the same thing, but I'd like to just see where that's going to go, not necessarily where it came from the different budgets, but just where it's going to be allocated to going forward.
Yeah, no, actually, I am going to clarify. This one's important is the operating budget, because we do tend to focus on the capital budget, and I've always been of the belief that maybe savings in the operating budget. So for simple analogy, Director, if X department had budgeted $100 for widgets and they only spent 50, so we've taxed people for the 100, but the 50, where does that money go? And then are we adjusting the operating budget for the fact we only spent the money? And my concern is that it compounds year after year, right? So we're taxing people and we're taking the money and putting it into surplus, where we're better not asking the department to adjust their budget to reality. Then if we do have that money in surplus, rather than just putting it into reserves, can we not take it to push down the operating budget? So actually, my concern, Councilor, is with the operating budget overall.
So thank you for the clarification. So really, that's now what we do with the auditors. So we go through, auditors make sure our numbers are lining up, everything's correct. Then there's a report that comes back to council as part of the audit that says, here's your surplus and deficit report, and it looks at, here's what's going to reserves, here's where, so there's a complete breakdown of any money going to reserves and where that goes. I'll give you an example of one, for instance, and that might be pertinent to the discussion following this with Director Huff. So in bylaw, we had one of the employees that was off for, I think it was 8 weeks. So there's 8 weeks of salary that wasn't paid out. So do you decrease your salaries based on sickness? Obviously not. So you wouldn't see a decrease in salaries, but there's a savings given in that year. So that savings then flows through into reserves for that year. So anytime where there's what I'll say explainable and where it was over budgeted or under budgeted, those adjustments have been made by the directors. Anything where it's like an illness or something like that, that money is just then moved into reserve. So what we do is take a look in producing, directors, when they take a look at producing their budgets, look at those line items where there might be a surplus or a deficit, on the specific budgeted to actual and make those adjustments. So if there's something where there's a one-off, then we're not gonna necessarily increase that line item because there's an expense this year that happened that's only gonna happen this year. But if there's something that needs to be adjusted, then those adjustments take place during the budget piece. The final breakdown of where that 5.2 goes will come back to council at the end of the audit. So those are the things that work through with the auditors, going through, making sure that our numbers are correct. Does that make sense?
It does, and I have more comments, but I'll say it was just about taxation. Councilor Brennan.
Yeah, this is a topic that's come up many times in the past, and I would just caution council to wait for the report before deciding what they want to do with that money, because in the past, things such as a snow removal reserve, we have a year possibly where there's hardly any snow, and the money perhaps isn't spent, and the next year, like in Snowmageddon, we get absolutely clobbered, and it's nice to have a nice pad of operating money available. So I think in the past there's been allocations to operating reserves that protect us from wide swings in taxation, you know, things like grass cutting and snow removal. So that's just my comment, sir.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, Director Huff.
Thank you, Chair. And so to Council, perhaps maybe I will start this presentation by just referencing sorry, I'm just going to get this in front of me. In the 2024 draft budget documentation prepared by Director Dakin, which outlines the services and applicable legislation that our department looks after. So that talks about a number of the different pieces of legislation that our department works under, whether it's planning or building or bylaw enforcement. And then with those, contained within that is the operating budget for each of the 3 divisions. And so perhaps I'll start with the building inspection, which is the second attachment to 4.1, and it's on page 19, so everybody's at that same section. And so you can see from I'll just focus on the 2023 budget to actual. So like many municipalities in Ontario, we did see lower building permits this year, reflecting the general condition of housing, I would say, in Ontario at this point in time. And then wages and benefits came in less than budgeted due to a staff vacancy. Service contracts came in less than budgeted, and that was primarily because we budgeted for 2023 to do our development charge bylaw update. However, because of the change to the Development Charges Act, that was no longer required, and it made sense to put that on hold until we completed the servicing master plan. And so then we have scheduled that to start in 2025 and 2026, which is where you see the numbers for that. In terms of supplies, there was an overage in 2023, and that was due to some unexpected expenses related to some building conditions that we have talked about as council in closed session. Conferences and training, I will make a point to say that due to some staff vacancies, it was staff pursued a number of training opportunities that's contained within HR's budget, but in terms of actually attending conferences, we weren't able to accommodate it because we only had 2 inspectors, and it wasn't practical to have 1 inspector at a conference and 1 doing the work of everybody. Repairs and maintenance, again, that actual is higher than budgeted, and that has to do with our vehicle maintenance. And then internal and reserve transfers, leading to total operating expenses coming in at the end fairly evenly. And I would just note for 2024, we do again anticipate a slight increase to what we did receive in terms of building permit revenue coming in from what we did this year, but still less than budgeted for in 2023. So We are aware of a number of large industrial projects that are going to get started, as well as a number of multi-residential projects. And so I think we will still have a healthy building permit revenue coming in. So I think that's the extent of what I wanted to cover for this one. And maybe if you would like me to pause now, if any of the council members had any questions.
Any questions? Okay, continue,
Sure.
Director.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so moving on to bylaw enforcement. This is on page 20 of the second attachments. And again, related to the user fees. So this is in relation to, we get approximately $20,000 per year from Southwest Middlesex. We have a service contract to provide bylaw enforcement services to them. And that's going very well. And then as well, it's also from the fees that we're obtaining from various fines and parking tickets and such. Going down to wages and benefits, again, it was less, actual is less than budgeted. That's due in part to a sick leave, and also the fact, due in part to a sick leave that was a number of weeks. In terms of the rest of the budget line items between 2023 and budget and actual, they came in fairly close, except, and again, in respect to repairs and maintenance, and that was again due to vehicle maintenance. In terms of what we're foreseeing in 2024, fairly even in terms of expected user fees to come in, and a slightly reduced wage in 2024 than what was budgeted in 2023. And primarily on par with the rest of the budget from 2023. So I'll pause there again if there's any questions.
Councilor Brandon.
Just one question through the chair. In terms of the service agreement with Southwest Middlesex, are you satisfied that the $20,000 figure that we're currently is offsetting all of our staff time?
Yes, I am. It's they spend approximately 1 day a week, and so $20,000 is more than enough to cover that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I have one, and I apologize for belaboring the point. This is going, the wages and benefits. So there was a $70,000 reduction in the wages due to a sickness. So does that go to a specific reserve fund, or where does it go, Director?
So it goes to the building, it goes to the bylaw reserve fund. So again, yeah, that's probably just the easiest. It goes to the reserve fund, and then it's up to council if there's something that they want to use that for. Obviously, as things come up, there might be something that needs to be looked after that's a one-off. Instead of taxing for it, obviously, you could use reserve fund. But it becomes income that the council can use to offset expenses.
Okay, so I'm going to apologize to council if I go on about this, but so it's in our bank account. Could you conceivably use that money to reduce the ask from building and planning to, so use that money to cover the wages for that department?
That money is at the disposal of council. So if council so chooses to use that money to offset the ask, then by all means, that's theirs.
Okay.
One of the things I would obviously caution council on is what I call opportunity costs. So once you spend the money out of reserve, it's spent. It's not something that gets an income where it's going to refill, unless of course we run another surplus. So typically using reserves for operating, unless it's a one-off kind of thing, is not necessarily that advisable.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Wilsey.
Just wondering, looking at the HR document that we've got where we're looking at the contract for the second bylaw officer. Do we want to talk about that while we're doing this, or do we want to talk about the budget for bylaw and then close this and then completely talk about this thing that is gonna change the budget, tomorrow. Just,
Yeah.
how do we want to do that?
So why don't we get through all of them, then we'll talk about it overall, 'cause there's a CFPO, why don't we just wait and do it then? Okay. Okay, Director?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the next one is planning operations. I believe it's 37, page 37, if I recall.
Page 20, I have page 20.
21.
21.
That's what I have it, but I wasn't sure that was correct. Okay, thank you. Thank you, page 21. Okay, so just going through the difference between user fees and between what was budgeted to actual. So there was quite a bit of an increase there in our user fees, and that relates to the application fees that we get in. So I think it is tough for us sometimes to anticipate how many applications, planning applications will come forward or consultations will come forward. And so we made our best guess for 2023, and happily there was actually more requests for planning applications than what we anticipated. So that's where that increase comes from. Wages and benefits, a slight decrease than what was anticipated, budget and actual. And that, and I will get into that in a minute, but that has to do with replacing of the co-op building position with the planning assistant. And the fact that it was anticipated to have started throughout the year of 2023 and in fact didn't start until 2024. Service contracts, substantially less than anticipated, but that was because this was in relation to our zoning bylaw update. And as you know, due to the timing of the passing of the budget, and then therefore following that, the tender for the zoning bylaw project, it didn't actually start until near the end of the year. So I don't have many invoices for that work coming in 2023. Most of the invoices you will see in 2024 for that. And same with advertising. The amount that I had budgeted for advertising in 2023 related to the zoning project, and as that zoning project didn't get started again until 2024 in earnest, most of the money was not spent there. Supplies, again, that's just an estimate by staff and intended to cover a number of different items, and we were thankfully not needing all of those supplies. Conferences came in as budgeted, and resulting in overall an actual being almost $100,000 less than budgeted. And then in terms of 2024, again, we have made an estimate for user fees that we're going to get. Hopefully we'll get that, hopefully we'll exceed that, but it's hard to know. In terms of wages and benefits, again, this looks like a significant jump, but what this is we've made the decision to hire a planning assistant, and that position replaces the co-op building position. And so the co-op building position was funded by the building department, whereas the planning assistant is funded by the planning department. As well, a portion of a number of our positions within the 3 divisions are interrelated, and so, for instance, some of my salary comes from the building department related to the work that I do in relation to the building or bylaw department. So Bill and I have worked closely this year to make sure that those percentages reflect more closely to the work that's being done by everybody. So that really accounts for the difference in how the wages were done in 2024 for planning. Again, service contracts has to do with the zoning and the related official plan work that is coming down, as will advertising and supplies. Conferences, again, that reflects a number of training opportunities and conferences attended by myself and some of the staff that we have, as well as committee of adjustment members. So I will leave it there as well, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I have one. When we use the county services, so Mr. Williams, is there a charge back on here for that? Or is that through the levy?
Through the chair to the chair, that's through the levy.
That's through the levy? Okay, thank you. questions? Okay. Councillor Wilsey.
Looking at this, is there, with the services that we get from the county, and maybe we have to talk about this differently, is there anything here that's duplicated that maybe is, realize it's part of your department and you've got staff doing it, but is there something there that's optional that the county could be doing for us where we maybe don't have to have staff employed here? Or what percentage of your department is kind of duplication of services that the county can offer? And if we're not using the county services, why not?
Director Huff?
Sure, through the chair to Councillor Wilsey. So we have a service agreement with the county, and the county takes an approach to planning where there is core services that are provided by the county to every municipality, and that relates to processing of development applications. That's from the attending a pre-consultation meeting, issuing notice of complete applications, as well as writing reports and presenting them to council. And then what is also offered by the county, if time allows, if staffing allows, is extra services, such as master planning, secondary plans, official plan, 5-year reviews. The county has not offered or has indicated that it has capacity to take on those types of services that would be considered extra to the contract. And so that's why we do the zoning amendments, we do secondary plans, we do urban design guidelines, we do our CIP program, we do all of that in-house that's not currently being provided by the county. As well, the county doesn't provide the administration that the staff members do. So in terms of actually circulating the notices, doing up the signage, acting as secretary treasurer to the committee of adjustment, that's not functions within the core service mandate of the county. And so those are the things that our staff do, as well as the GIS. And again, we have in total 2 GIS positions here at the municipality, and we've certainly had discussions whether or not one was sufficient. And for all of the mapping, whether it's of development mapping, whether it's of creating mappings to assist in the economic development portfolio, whether or not it's, and also creating our portal where you can now go online and access information on all of the building permits. That's not something that the county does. And so that's something that our GIS staff do in our department, and something that would be more work than what would be available for one GIS position. So certainly something that we could approach the county, but I would expect that certainly that would have an impact on the levy.
Councillor Wilsey?
And I guess when I look at that, is my confusion when I look at the budget, I just see one line for wages and benefits. I don't see how much we're paying for the GIS services that are covering those benefits. When you talk about the communications and circulating it, we have a communications department, so I don't know why you're potentially duplicating services that could be done by that department. You talk about your online part, we're putting in, that sounds like a lot of that is covered by IT, which may be part of your budget too. But I guess my biggest frustration looking through this is with looking at the numbers we get, we have a broad category for wages and benefits. We don't know what services are being covered, which department is doing that, so really what it makes it hard for me to do is to have enough information to actually ask any good questions. I can ask broad questions and I can get answers like we've got tonight, which are good answers. However, there's not enough information or detail for me to do a follow-up and actually find out, well, how much are we spending on this? What is the value for this position? We don't have that either in the document presented or the follow-up document that's more detailed the council got. So I guess with that, I still have lots of questions, but I don't think we're going to get any answers in this because I don't have any information to ask you a good question.
I'm gonna let, just before, I'm gonna let CAO answer part of that, Greg.
Yeah, Fred's gonna go.
So, good questions, I have some too, so let CAO answer.
Through the chair, so based on previous discussions that the committee and council has had, we have included funds within the budget for a service delivery review. And a service delivery review looks at those specific questions. They look at the services that are delivered, how they're delivered, efficiencies, duplication. So all of that is something that we've heard from council as previous discussions. So that is, I've been through a service delivery before, and that's what it gets down and drills down to all of those specifics. Usually in budget documents like this, usually the wages and benefits are in one line, and then service delivery organizational review digs deeper and provides that detail.
Councillor Brennan, did you still have a point or
The
question?
CAO answered my question. I was going to direct it to the CAO because I thought a service delivery thing would be what you referred to, so thank you.
Yeah. Any other? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Wilsey.
Just as a question, what is timing for that report? Because if we're gonna pass the budget before we know what services we're delivering in duplication, I guess as I'm hearing about this now, we're like 2 months into the budget process or 3 months into the budget process, and now we're just hearing about this breakdown of what services. It's my second year on council. I would have thought that on anything we would have had this a lot earlier is kind of what I'm thinking. I just don't know how to say disappointed and not offend anybody.
No, you won't offend me, and actually I'll take a tact at answering the question because we're learning as we go along. So I think the budget review has been better. To answer your question directly, the service review, it won't be done for this budget cycle. It will be for the 2025, 2026, 2027. It's something that's just crossed the radar screen. New CAO has agreed it's something we need to do, so the timing's probably never perfect, but we'll have it for the next, it takes some time to do, Councillor. It'll probably be, 4 or 5, maybe 6 months to get it done, so understand the disappointment. I wish we had all the information in front of us, but I guess there's no time to start better than the present, but certainly understand and commiserate. It's better to have all the information, but we will get it eventually. Councillor Hippel?
Thank you. Well, actually, that's a good question because, so I'm wondering, and in a situation like this, is this something where, and I mean, we're going down the path because we're doing a multi-year budget. Would it have been easier for us, I'm not sure easier is the proper word, but to maybe have not done a multi-year budget and maybe to have done I'm not stopping everybody, I'm just saying, would that have been a better way to go? And then we could be on track and ready to go moving forward.
So I can take a stab at that one and answer that one. I think what we're doing here is we are gonna do a 1-year budget. So we recognize there has to be some improvements made, like the service reviews. I think I'm gonna use the wrong adverb and I'll get in trouble. I don't wanna use the word pause. I'll go take a break. And then once we get the service review probably in July, August, we'll start the full multi-year. I think it's important to get through this 1 year, get the information we need. I think it's okay to say every once in a while, just take a step back. There's more information we need, and we'll get that information moving forward. But I think what we're doing here right now is we're just doing the 1 year. And a pause is a terrible word to use, as Deputy Mayor will agree. How about we're gonna take a breath, get the information we need, then proceed. Any other questions? Okay. Anything else? I think, I just have one comment. I guess it's for both the CAO and Director Payne. It is always useful to have the full-time equivalency report, because year over year, so that's something I always look for and really ask if we could have that. That's important to see. Okay. Any other questions of Director Huff? Councillor Wilsey.
It's not really a question for Director Huff. I just wanted to make it clear, I'm not trying to pick on this particular department. I've had this question over all the departments about the breakdown of the different stuff, so it's not particularly on planning. So I wanted to, it's not particularly your department, it's all the budget documents. It's just, this was the first time it came up.
just to follow up though, Director Dakin, we do have the, I use the word line by line, we do have those though, correct? And so I have seen them and looked at them, they are available in our package.
Yes, through the chair to yourself, yes, they are there, but it is still a wages
Right.
line,
Okay.
but a benefit line, not lumped together wages and benefits, but there is a wages line and a benefits line within the detail. But it doesn't go by position in the detail, like we don't, here's what it costs for a planner, here's what it costs for the GIS assistant.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Sorry, just to
Yep.
circle back on the, so you'll notice under the HR budget, which we've already been through, in the new documents, we added that service review. So hopefully you received when you saw that, that number's around 90,000. So that has been added. You'll see that the increase in the HR budget to the 90,000, that's sort of an estimate that we received based on previous work done, just so you're aware. That's built into the HR budget for 2024.
Any other questions? Okay, CEO, are we on to legal and legislative? Yep. And will that be the clerk handling that one?
Yes.
Okay. Give it a review, clerk, and then we'll turn it over to council.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, Legal and Legislative Services has a pretty diverse portfolio. As you understand and know, we not only engage in council and committee support, but animal control, school crossing guard program, cemetery administration, reporting, records management, licensing, and of course, management of the municipal and school board elections. So just to do an overview, I'll pull up my documents here. Let's see, so the separate budget lines under the department, so animal control, not seeing a lot of discrepancy there. Under legal and legislative services, as you know, the department was one in terms of wages and benefits that was largely in flux for the majority of 2023, so that's why you'll see some differences in the numbers there. And then bringing that back into alignment for 2024. And then again, with some of the crossing guard allocations, that's just taking into consideration, let's see, the COLA and step increases as well for those serving in the school crossing guard program. I guess at this point I'll leave it, and I will just welcome any questions from members of council in relation to the operations budget for legal and legislative services.
Any questions? Well, I'll start it off. I'll go, and I don't know why I can't let go of this one. I understand if you allocate money for snow plowing and we don't have to plow the snow as much, and that goes to a reserve fund. But I'm looking at the wages and looking at legal and legislative services. It's almost $300,000 there, $298,000 that we didn't use. And if I'm a taxpayer, I paid for a service and didn't use it, and now I'm gonna pay for that service again. So I look at the amount of money. There's $298,000 there. Then I go back to building and planning. There's another 80. That's a fair chunk of dollars to me. That especially in this year, we're going to people the possibility of a 5% tax increase, and they paid for the service. Why we can't take that money and apply that to this year's wages? And I don't mean to be obtuse on that one, Bill, but it just that's one that is sticking at me. I get the snow plowing analogy from Councillor Brennan, but yeah, I'll go to the deputy mayor, then to Councillor Wilsey.
I think this is attached to your comments, Your Worship. So through you to Director Dakin, do we have a reserve for like taxation increases? I'm thinking We do. What is that called? Because I know we have something similar in county.
Through the chair to the deputy mayor, it's the Future Needs Reserve.
The what?
Future Needs Reserve.
Okay, future needs reserve. So does any of this money get funneled into there where we would draw down to keep taxation low? I see you answering, you're shaking your head.
No, so we don't put money specifically into the Future Needs Reserve unless council directs it to there. So what will happen, like I said, when we have the final year-end report, there'll be a report coming forward that says, here's all the surpluses and deficits by each department. Here's where that money is scheduled to go. Council then says, no, we want to take the surplus from legal and legislative and apply it to the Future Needs Reserve. Typically, it would just go into the, we have a direct line within the, what used to be called the Treasury budget, which is now called the Finance budget, where we actually do a reserve transfer into that future needs to make that specifically. So council has the ability to put the money into whatever reserve they wish, and you can direct it into that future needs, but nothing directly goes into that future needs unless it's directed by council.
Yeah, follow up, and then we'll go to Councilor Wilsey, then Councilor Brennan.
So it's just a definition question. What else would get paid out of that future needs if we were to put money in there? Is there anything other than offsetting taxation increases?
So this year, the 1.1 million to Caradoc Housing came out of that future needs reserve in 2023, as directed by council. Typically, as reports come to council, if there's need for funds that are not allocated, then that's where it would come from.
So,
Go ahead. Councilor Wilsey, then Councilor Brennan.
One is, I know we can put the money for the wages. I would say that rather than offsetting this year's wages, what I think would be a more kind of straight line and individual going up would be actually using to offset capital expenses rather than incurring new debt. Would be my thought, which would still just be a reserve transfer out of it. So however we do the accounting to put it in reserves and pull out, I think that would be probably a better way just to, cause if we, and my concern, I guess, because you've said it on other ones, and just so we're on the same page, if we offset the cost of salaries for the following year, that just means we have a double increase the next year. So it's not makes it harder to catch up the following year. We don't want to be playing catch up. Where I think if we're spending capital, that's a one-time expense. That would be a better place to put the one-time funds. So still use it towards next year budget, just different section of the budget. Same idea. My question I was going to ask before I came onto that was actually at the service contracts, and to see what kind of service contracts we're doing. We were budgeting another $60,000 or $65,000 over this year. We didn't spend this year's budget. We didn't spend 22's budget. What are we getting for those service contract dollars, and why do we see the need to increase them by 20% when we haven't spent the money on them over the past 2 years?
Sorry, through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, if I may ask the Director of Finance if you could speak to that line item, please.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so the lion's share of the service contracts in the legal and legislative department involve legal fees. So I'll list them out. Bylaw enforcement, legal fees, consulting legal fees, human resource legal fees, insurance claim. So in the event that we have to pay out on an insurance claim, we carry a $25,000 deductible on our general liability and $10,000 on our property. So the first $10,000 of any property claim is through that fund. General legal fees, planning legal fees are all part of those. So it's basically anything to do with the legal fees. And as you can see, we're in a very litigious society, and I think right now the news reports for Strathroy-Caradoc, I think, promote that, unfortunately. So we need to make sure that we're budgeting for those. So If we don't have any legal encounters, then obviously we wouldn't be spending that money.
Councillor Wilsey, follow up then, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, just as a follow-up then. So in some of our recent meetings we've been told about potential costs that we're likely going to face with our settlement boundary adjustment and the dollars that could cost. Without looking at the reserves here, we're told that, maybe I just can't say the amount in open council, that wasn't a closed meeting. I'll leave that to the directors to say. I don't know if I can say that number or not. But do we have enough there that's budgeted? Because that was a number that was very, very high, 6 figures, if not into 7.
So without getting too involved in closed sessions, I was not part of those closed sessions, so I think that's a discussion for closed session.
Okay, fair. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, the wages and benefits line on legal and legislative drew my attention as well. And I guess what I'm looking at is in 2022, we budgeted 718 and spent 518, so we under budgeted, if you will. We underspent by 200,000. That's, you know, alone, that's an interesting thing and probably requires maybe an explanation for us, council, to refresh our memories what went on there. But then also with 998,302 budgeted in 2023, and the actual being 700,000, you know, a $298,000 swing downward as well. So there's 2 years in a row where we're underspending by significant amounts of dollars. I guess my question would be, those budget figures were there because they were in a budget process, and I suppose there were things that were supposed to happen. And for whatever reason, I guess those things have not happened and the money has not been spent. But when I see it 2 years in a row, and we just have these figures here, I really would like to, maybe if we're allowed to in this forum, to have an explanation of what happened last year and this year, to have 2 consecutive years where we're underspent by 200,000 and the next year by 298,000. Now I understand there were some changes made as one council merged into another council, and there were some administrative decisions made, and to the extent that we're allowed to discuss it out of camera, I was just wondering in a public forum, do we know what didn't happen this year to go from 998 to 700,000? I guess that's my question. And I do not want to wander into in-camera territory, but I would like an explanation in a public forum. Thank you.
Yep. Do you want to tackle that one, or the director?
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, to Councillor Brennan, I can take a very high-level explanation and then perhaps again hand it off to the Director of Finance. But in 2023, we did see the start of our contract communications assistant position, so that would have been allotted for in 2023. And for the majority of 2023, the CAO clerk role, of course, was not as active, or was not active, so with me coming into the position in late December. So that's my high-level explanation of it, and perhaps the Director of Finance could offer more detail.
So through the chair to Councillor Brennan, so in 2022, there was the added position that was never hired for, which was the communication, as well as there was the transfer of the Police Services Board responsibilities to the clerk's department, and there was anticipation of hiring someone for that to sort of oversee some of the meeting minute taking, which never took place. In 2023, again, there was a need to split out the CAO and the clerk and Director of Legal Legislative, so that was budgeted for in 2023. As the director just pointed out, that was didn't take place until December of 2023, so not 11 months of basically a position that was not filled. Again, the same thing, the carryover of those 2 positions. You'll notice that the budget for 2024 is almost not quite 200,000 less, so that has been corrected now and also looked after there.
Okay. Councillor Brennan, follow up then the Deputy Mayor.
Just to follow up then, and thank you for that explanation. That was very nice and concise. Would it be fair to say then that these numbers and the $200,000 and $298,000 swings are largely the byproduct of council decisions that were made in the area of legal and legislative services and the natural sort of fruit thereof? I just want to make sure that people understand that maybe it's council decisions that are driving some of these numbers and not necessarily staff decisions. Thank you.
Through the chair to Councilor Brennan, I think that's safe to say that these are council decisions. Obviously, they were put in the budget and then they were acted upon.
Fair enough. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to pose just a thought or a question out to my fellow councillors. Would it be prudent to develop a taxation stabilization reserve? My first thought would be taking money such as Councillor Brennan has been talking about, this $200,000 a year over the last 2 years, but let's just take it, 1 year there was 200 and the next year there was a little bit more than 200 or substantially more than 200. When that happens, we've been told, and I agree, we don't reduce that budget line item because it's been carefully crafted over many, many years, but there has been a significant savings. So if we were to take a percentage or all of that, I'm more thinking a percentage of that money, and put it into a taxation stabilization reserve, and it's specifically for that function. So at the end of this process that we're engaged in, and we all have in our minds a figure that we aim for as a percentage tax increase, and perhaps that percentage tax increase comes in at X plus 1%. Then we would have the option of going into a taxation stabilization account to move money back into, from that reserve back into the budget so that we hit X. I've seen this used in a couple of other large committees that I sit on, and it gives that option without affecting the base budgeted item. I'm just seeing comments.
Director Dakin.
Through the chair to the deputy mayor. So I guess in essence, you already have a taxation stabilization, which is called future needs. It's named different. It's at your disposal to use it for whatever. One of the things that one needs to understand is that once you sort of earmark money, there's a fence put around that money. So in a rate stabilization, that funds would only be available through council. A council can change that, but the definition would be for rate stabilization. So if you needed to use it for anything other, you would have to go outside the policy to do that. So I think the reason the future needs was established, and I believe, just off the top of my head, it was around 2016, was for that distinct purpose, that it could be used for rate stabilization, it could be used for any other one-offs that come. So it gives you a little more, it gives you a broader parameters to use those funds for. More than happy to, at council's direction, to set up a rate stabilization, and we can put funds into that as well. So, and at the end of the day, we can do that even when the report comes forward from the auditors as to what our surplus is and where you want those surpluses to go. So I don't know if that answered the question, or
Very much.
Okay.
Can I?
Yeah. Go ahead.
We talk about reserves a lot. How many reserves would we have? Just, you probably don't know off the top of your head, but like, are we talking like 6 of them, or 26 of them, or 126?
I'm gonna hit the middle number, around 26.
Okay,
So
sweet.
we try, again, I think same thing. You don't wanna create so many reserves that you've got unending reserves, but on the other hand, you wanna make sure that you've got a reserve that meets the purpose for which it's set up in. So I think we're, off the top of my head, around 26, using your numbers. So we're not 6, we're not 106, we're in the middle, 26.
Thank you.
Councilor Brand.
Just a quick one through the mayor to the Director of Finance. And I'm trying to remember, have we in fact used the future needs reserve in the last 5-10 years to actually have a rate stabilization? I'm thinking perhaps we have.
Through the chair to Councilor Brennan, so in fact, last year we used it because we didn't, we reduced our contributions to that, so that then reduced our rate. So we've used it last year, and I believe in 2022 as well. So last couple of years it's been used, not fully, but obviously, yeah.
Just a follow-up comment, that in effect, that's what we've used it for. So the fact that we do get to use it for tax stabilization, but that money is also sufficiently fluid that it can be used in other situations if needed.
Councillor Wilsey.
Just got a quick comment, just the same thing that Deputy Mayor talked about, the same thing you and I spoke about, of just using these reserves and using them to say offset a one-time capital. It's just exactly what the director's talking about. So we're all circling around the same thing and using the same ideas about using a portion of these over budget items to offset the capital, so we don't need as much of a tax increase this year. I just say capital could be the total funds and wherever they go, but.
Nope, good idea.
My question that I had though was actually back on legal and legislative service, to get back on the budget. This supplies line item, I see that it's been almost double every year that we have listed history for. Can we get a bit of an explanation as to why that line item has doubled? And if we are done with the future needs reserve discussion. I don't want to derail that one, but next one, could it be that?
Clerk? Yep.
I'll take a stab at that. And then, Brianna can step in, the director can step in. So one of the things is the addition of the Attainable Housing Initiative. Money flows into that account. No, sorry, that's not it. Books and periodicals, licensing and permit costs, office supplies, and then other supplies. So the largest one was going to be our licensing and permit costs. Those have changed because of the automation, so we're now looking at more fees for the software the department uses. So one of the things is, and that number has increased because of the move also to Office 365 as we slowly migrate over to that through the different departments. So each department's going to be responsible for their own licensing under that. It makes it a little easier and helps it keep that cost more trackable as opposed to just a broad license number.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Wilsey.
So that's why it goes from 327,000 this year to just a budgeted 146 next year, is because we're spreading that cost over multiple departments, or is that 146 too low of a number?
Two things. First of all, it's a reduction in, yes, so spreading costs, number one, but number two, there's also been, so for instance, if you look at attainable housing in 2024, so in 2023, we budgeted, I think it was 130, and it's going down in 2024, if I'm not mistaken as well. So there's some of those line items where those numbers are getting adjusted. Again, those are things that the council can change.
Okay, go ahead, one more, Councillor, then we'll go to the deputy mayor.
What is the Attainable Housing Fund used for? I've seen that on the budget a bunch of times. I have no idea where that money goes or what it's spent on.
So I think I can take a stab and then I'll let the director as well. So that was a fund that was established in 2021, I believe, a line item to start addressing some of the attainable housing. So this is seed money that's used to address attainable housing. So whether it be grants that the council would like to offer to someone to deal with strictly attainable housing, or initiatives that the council itself would like to engage in. And I'll let the director take over from there.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, to echo Director Dakin's comments, the Attainable Housing Initiative currently is expenses related to the Attainable Housing Project in Bridges, and understanding that could also be allocated for other locations in the future.
Okay. One more, because then Deputy Mayor's on.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're clear on this, so, because we have a line item already in the second part of the budget for Caradoc Housing. So in addition to that, we budgeted 130,000 and there's 316 spent. So we've actually spent 1.1 million out of tax reserves in addition to the 1.1 million we've loaned Caradoc Housing for this project. Is that what I'm hearing? Because that sounds like what I'm hearing.
Just, Karen, do you want to clarify that, Director Dakin? Can you run that by again then?
So we have a line item on our budget for Caradoc Housing where they got
Right.
743,000. Then we have this line item, which we were just told by the clerk went to Caradoc Housing for 316,000. And there's a loan under the future needs reserve for 1.1 million. So if I put all of that together, that's 2.1 million before we loan them the 2 million. I just want to make sure that's actually went there, because I thought we were told before that, like right now it looks like we gave double the amount of money to Caradoc Housing that we thought we did.
Never seen that money. So Director Dakin, can you take a minute, because clarify this?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so the 316,000 is part of the consulting fees, all those kinds of things that the municipality, as the owner of the Caradoc Housing, pays for that are not directly attributable to the project. There is then money that's directly attributable to the project, which goes through Caradoc Housing. Caradoc Housing is a corporation which is owned by the corporation of the municipality. So the only reason it shows up, and to be honest, needs to be addressed within the budget, is because they are a separate entity, very similar to Tri-Township Arena, which even Tri-Township Arena, I'm not sure what I'll call corporate structure of that is, but those are where we are part owners in the case of Tri-Township, and whole owners of Caradoc Housing. The reason they're in this budget is to just show the ownership piece. They are, with Caradoc Housing, self-supporting. Short of this year, we had to loan them money because of the project that was going on, a repayable loan on that one, and then any of the consulting fees and those kinds of things that were needed to get the project off the ground. That's what flows through there. And the timing, so the 316 would probably include some of the stuff that was done in 2022 to get the project off the ground and ready to go.
So just to.
Go ahead.
Another question, just to clarify. So it would be correct in saying that we had the 743 that went to Caradoc Housing plus this, so we spent over $1 million on Caradoc Housing. Loan Caradoc Housing 1.1, and then another 2 million that they're gonna be repaying, correct?
So through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, 700,000 is an in and out. Caradoc Housing covers that 700,000. So 700,000 is their budget, 700,000 is their fees. So there's $0 in that 700,000 that comes from Caradoc, that comes from this municipality, from Strathroy-Caradoc to Caradoc Housing. That's just showing it, it's just very similar to Tri-Township Arena. Tri-Township Arena shows 386,000. They raise their own money to cover off the 386,000. So the 700 is in and out with Caradoc Housing. The 300 is what the municipality paid to start that affordable housing project.
Okay.
So it is, and then on top of that, the council did loan Caradoc Housing 1.1 million towards that project as well.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Great conversation. My mind is going back to, for one moment, to the idea of or not the idea, but the future needs reserve. So I'm just wondering if, maybe by tomorrow or whenever, I'm wondering through you to the Director of Finance and the CAO, if they would be able to comment about, I guess, a policy, or it could be a administrative decision I suspect, I guess it would have to be ours, policy driven, but should a portion of unspent money in wages and benefits into that reserve fund to a maximum dollar figure of whatever, so that we always know that we have, at least for the purposes of stabilization, we always have funding there. Does that make sense? I'm not looking for a huge report. I don't want it to be overly time consuming, but it's probably unfair to ask you sitting here right now to comment about it, but.
So, through the chair to the deputy mayor, yes, the municipality is required to have a policy on reserve funds. So we have that policy in place. So if council wants to make specific changes, excuse me, we'll just need to ensure that that detail and that information is contained within the policy. So yes, if there's something specific that council would want to do, we certainly can just update our current reserve policy.
Councilor Derbyshire.
Thank you. Guess through you to Director Dyken. Can I ask just for clarity on this for my own brain, because I got lost there in those numbers. The 700,000 we didn't actually write out anywhere, right? That's basically what would have been fees, permits, and all that. So, am I correct in saying that?
700,000, sorry. The 700,000 to Caradoc Housing?
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about? No, 700,000 is the operating of Caradoc Housing, which is covered by Caradoc Housing.
The 360.
So that's their budget. So the
That's their
316 then would be fees, consultation, like, did we
Correct.
pay that, or is
Yes,
that
we
just
paid
stuff
that.
that? Okay,
Yes.
so there's no allotment for the land or any of that, building permits or any of that would have been? This is actual cash. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that
Yes.
they weren't just things that were on paper that actually didn't,
No, this is cash paid out. This would be for things that are not part of the physical building of that project. As the owner of that building, you would pay. So for instance, I'm just trying to think of a good example. Cost consultant. So we hired a cost consultant to make sure that there was not cost overrun. That cost consultant was hired by the municipality to make sure that those things, so we as a municipality paid that cost consultant. We paid Devonshire Financial, who was our quasi-project manager on that. Those are fees that were paid by the municipality to ensure that project.
So again, I guess I'll ask this question then. So are we then able to get a financial review or audit of that, being that they were so we can see the breakdown then of how this, basically how the money was kind of spent on this project, being that it was our project. I know it's been turned over to a board now, but we could actually, as a council, then ask for a review, which I guess we did ask for before. It would just be now implementing it now that it's done and turned over.
Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire. So first of all, the 316 will be part of the municipal audit, so they will go through all those numbers. Equally, on the other side, because of the mortgage being involved in the Caradoc Housing, they now need an external auditor, not a review, because before there was no mortgage on the 2500 Queen Street. There was a review that was done by BDO, but it was a review, it wasn't an audit. This year, for 2023, anything for Caradoc Housing will need to be audited and an audited statement provided by the auditor.
Yeah. Just go ahead, Councillor Wilkie, then. And I'm going to jump in on Councillor Derbyshire's.
So my question on the 753, is that achieved by adding together the rents for the two buildings? That looks like it's about the right number from the budgets. The new building, I don't know if it's fully rented out yet or not, but it definitely wasn't rented out in January. Because the costs are still gonna be the same for that building. Is the municipality going to have to pay the difference, or what do we do? Because if we miss 3 months of rent, or whatever the number is, of that 753,000, that's like 100,000, where does that come from? Does that come out of tax, does that come out of our budget? How is that gonna be represented? Because I know in 2023, we got 0 rent from that building. So if the 743 was the whole one, that's showing me like 150,000, where does that $600,000 shortfall come from?
So through the chair to Councillor Willesee, sorry. That would be an ideal question for the treasurer of the Caradoc Housing Corporation. That is their responsibility. They would then have to, if there's gonna be a shortfall, then they would have to come back to this council and say, we need more funds, or they're gonna have to find a way. That is their budget and their budget to deal with, no different than Tri-Township Arena. If Tri-Township Arena doesn't sell enough ice, then does Tri-Township Arena come back and ask for more funds? They're treated exactly the same. They're two separate corporations.
Okay. Just to move, because, go ahead, and I just want to comment to Councilor Derbyshire.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
one.
it may come up more in the next meeting, in our council meeting regarding reviews and audits. So I just want to let you know that, Councilor Derbyshire. Councilor Willesee.
So just as a follow-up then, so just knowing there was no rent paid on the new building, we should be expecting Caradoc Housing to come back and talk to us for approximately 1 year's worth of rent in the near future. They haven't yet, but we should be expecting them to come back and say, hey, we were $600,000 short from last year. We should be expecting that soon to balance our budget. And what happens if they don't? Because they don't have that.
Through the chair to Councillor Willesee, I'll defer to the two members from council who sit on that board. So they can maybe let us know what the plan is, if there is a plan. And
Yeah, I'll answer that, because not to deflect or defer, because we, neither Councilor Pammer, who's the chair of it, are prepared to talk about it this time. We will be coming back, I understand the question, but again, not to deflect or defer, just, this isn't a Caradoc Housing, but I understand it, and you saw both Councilor Pammer and I writing some notes, but I understand the question, and there is parts of this discussion, I will tell you, that are news to me as a member of the board of Caradoc Housing.
And just, I wasn't looking for an answer right now, and I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, but just I saw that and just trying to be transparent and just make sure that we all know what's coming up and what we should be expecting. That's what I'm looking for.
No, again, Councilor Willesee, we're not deflecting, we understand, there's stuff that we heard and there are reports coming. Deputy Mayor, then we can move on.
Yes. I'm just wondering if you would accept a motion to move 50% of any surplus from the wages and benefits line item on each department to the future needs reserve.
2023?
I'm thinking as a policy on a go-forward basis that just on that one line item, we've talked about it extensively through a number of different, well, planning department and now legislative services. There seems to be money periodically showing up in surplus. So my motion is to take 50% of that surplus and put it into future needs, because I see that as taxation stabilization. The other 50%, the Director of Finance will find a good home for it, I'm sure.
Comment, Deputy Mayor? Go, sorry, Councilor Brand, I'll defer to you. You haven't made a motion yet, by the way, we don't have a second motion.
Oh, I know, yeah, you haven't called for a seconder on it.
Okay, call for a seconder on his motion. Okay, Councilor Willesee, now we can have discussion. Councilor Brennan.
In a budget meeting, I find it's sometimes a good idea to get the final numbers before we start implementing new policies. We currently have a future needs reserve, which does function as a tax stabilization fund and can be used this year in our deliberations for this budget to make adjustments if we want to lower the tax rate. So that mechanism is already there for this budget. I would respectfully submit that a new policy would be something that we could look at after the budget process has been completed and after we have used the future needs reserve as a tax stabilization fund, if so required. But the other cautionary note is that if we make a sweeping policy, there may be times when it would be inappropriate to do so, because it could be that if the money wasn't just spent because someone was sick all year or something like that. If we take 50% and move it away into a tax stabilization fund that we can't touch, the department is fully staffed the following year, we might run into some budgetary shortfalls. That's what I'm worried about.
If I can
Go
just
ahead.
reply. So, it's not to reduce, through you, your worship,
Yeah,
sorry,
I know.
Councillor Brennan. So it's not to reduce, I don't want to reduce the budget line item. I'm looking when there's the surplus. So they'll always keep the budget line item. So if it's a $300,000 budgeted line item, they've only spent $200,000. So we're only going to take the $100,000 from that year, take half of it and put it into future needs. That was my motion. I will say, though, that I think you've made a good point in, I like my idea. Perhaps this is the wrong time to bring it forward. So with that, I will reintroduce it at what may be a more appropriate time if Councillor Wilsey would agree to withdrawing the motion. And I'll withdraw.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No, that's good. Any further questions of legal and legislative? Yes. Yep, it's withdrawn. Okay. Economic development, I believe both Director Dakin and the CEO are going to speak to those.
Through the chair to council. Heather sends her regrets. She was unable to attend tonight, but she has passed along some information that I will do my best to share with council. So if you look at the economic development budget, you can see, if we look at revenue first, you can see there's the, oh, I'm so sorry. We're on page 35, I believe.
That's what I have.
Page 38 of the council, of the agenda package.
6.
Okay.
Page 36 of the.
36 of 58.
Okay. Perfect. If we look at the revenue for 2024, you can see taxation amount for the economic development line. And then we have a line called grants. And within that grant, the two sort of major grants that make up that amount is the transportation grant that we receive, as well as the transit revenue, or both go into that account line. And again, that funding, just so council is aware, that full funding concludes in 2025. So I just wanted to make council aware of that. The next line we have within revenue is the reserve transfer. So that those three are the major amounts that make up the revenue. If we move into wages and benefits, you'll see that the wages and benefits line has come down, and that is because in 2023 we had sort of a full-time equivalent position, and then we had a contracted position, and that was the digital service squad member, and that was within the economic development budget, and that was a grant position. So that grant would come in through the revenue, and then the expenditure for that position would be in the wages and benefits line, and that's why you'll see the reduction in the wages for the 2024 budget. When you look at the service contracts, that is a combination of several of the lines on your left-hand side of the page. So the major component of that service contracts is that inter-community transportation excuse me, expense that we have. So again, what we have coming in the revenue is coming out in the expense line. And also in that line is skills trade program as well, makes up that service contracts. Within advertising, so the advertising line is sort of the marketing materials, community promotion for economic development. You'll see that there is a slight increase for 2024. Speaking with Heather about this, you can see the actuals for 2023. We were slightly under budget, but she does have a plan in place with the completion of the service delivery, the strategic plan, excuse me. With the completion of the strategic plan, then she'll be ramping up the promotion and advertising for economic development. The large line here for supplies, and within that supply line, if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see the largest component excuse me, of that is the Community Improvement Program funding for $750,000. And that is, we have a Community Improvement Program, or a CIP program. And the CIP program is the one tool that a municipality can have to provide funding to property owners within the municipality. And within our CIP program, we have several different streams. So there's like a heritage sort of facade stream. There also is an industry stream that covers building permits and some development charges fees. And so that 750, it has been, you can see, increased from 2023, and that's because we've already had some conversations, early on some conversations with some industries that are looking at using the CIP program. So we wanted to be prepared to support those industries. We also have several applications or interest from downtown property owners as well in the core that may qualify for the program. So that is a large component, is that supplies component. Also in that, excuse me, in that budget line is also included some of the outreach for economic development, which is like the Manufacturers Forum, Chamber of Commerce events, BIA co-promotion. And then we have conferences, trainings, and professional fees. And you can see there's an increase to the budget here for 2024. And there Heather has some plans for participation with some of the larger sort of provincial sector, trade missions coordinated by the province, and our memberships with the provincial and federal ECDEV associations. So she's looking to ramp up the program for 2024. I'm happy to answer any questions or defer to Director Dakin if I've missed anything as well.
Anything?
Excuse me.
No, any questions? Just a comment for council. The big one is the grants for the transit. Not many people know that the intercommunity transit is run out of Economic Development Office. And that is something that decision we may have to face, because if the grant dries up and we've got riders who are used to it, it's a growing service, so just put it on your radar that there's a question that we may have to answer in next year, next couple of years. Councillor Wilsey?
My question was about the intercommunity transit, and just looking at the more detailed Excel sheet that was sent out, which I believe is the one that the CIO was looking at. When I look at our budgeted revenue from that, we had $480,000 was budgeted, but the actual receipt on this document is just under $123,000, so there's $350,000 there. And then when I look at the expense side, it was approximately $50,000 over. So could I get explanations for why we are $350,000 low and why it costs $50,000 more than budgeted?
I'll let you two figure out who's going to answer that question.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't have that spreadsheet in front of me, so I can bring something back. Yeah, we can bring that tomorrow. Lindsay said she has that spreadsheet, so we can bring that tomorrow and speak to that if the CAO isn't prepared.
I think that would be great.
Okay, that's fine.
For the intercommunity transit, which is half of what the 2023 budget is. So I'm just wondering, I don't know why it changed. It was 483 in 22 and 482,500 in 2023, and then we're only 250,000 in 2024. So I just and then the cost is still staying at 485,000. So just some explanation on that part.
Yep. CAO, did you have that, or Director Dakin?
That one I can answer because I was involved in setting up the budget way back in 2019, when the process started, and it was based on a 5-year budget, and then because of COVID, they stretched it out. So those numbers are directly from the budget that's submitted to the province. So just in expanding the out 2 years is why so we had to sort of redo 24 and 25, which weren't part of the original budget. So really what it was, everything was supposed to end in 2023. So they ended up spreading it out 2 years. So we just basically took that 500 and split it between the two 2 years, 24 and 25.
So as a follow-up, does that mean we're expecting to get 250,000 and 485 on the intercommunity transit in 2024? Because if that's the case, we shouldn't be waiting a year or two to talk about the intercommunity transit.
Well, it's a grant, so I'll let Director Dakin, the grant could run out. So go ahead.
So through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so that is correct, that basically that's the way the grant was structured. There is negotiations going on right now about how does that work, simply because of the COVID piece. They're still dealing with that, trying to get a catch-up going, because in essence, the systems were shut down during that COVID period. So they're renegotiating that. The other thing is I know that there has been some discussion at the county level, if I'm not mistaken, and the mayor might have some more insight on that one. But there is some discussion at the county level about what happens in 2025 and taking more of a county lens as opposed to an individual municipality lens.
And just to reiterate, that's a provincial grant, right? Yes. Yep, go ahead, CO McKibben.
We will provide some further information to council on this one.
So then the budget is potentially right where we are subsidizing, we're prepared in the budget to subsidize that by $235,000 for this year, is what I'm reading in the budget, so that seems like that's correct.
Did anybody have an answer to that one, Director Dakin? That's a fair question, Councillor Wilsey.
That is correct. And so this is one of the things that the discussions is about, is how sustainable is this based on the fact that the majority of the money comes from the grant and ridership. Obviously, we have one bus, that's the piece. So if we had more buses, would our ridership be up? Those are the kinds of things that are sort of happening at a county level right now because of the economy of scale with the way the transit system works.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Wilsey.
Follow up on that, being we are looking at spending that money as this year, could I ask the CAO to bring a report on this? I remember last time we brought a report, and this is just going from memory, that when I did the math, it cost the municipality approximately $25 per ride, which is about so what it's costing us. From when I did the math myself initially from the previous report we saw forward, from the ridership and the yearly cost, I did some of my own calculations, and I figured out that it cost the municipality about twice what we charge the riders to put it on. So we're subsidizing half of everyone's ride, and there weren't that many rides. If we have more riders, maybe the fees went up, but we did get a report from the Economic Development Department in my term on council. I can't remember the date. Could we get an update on that before this budget is passed, so we know if this is something we want to continue with?
You want to make a motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
All right, question or seconder, Deputy Mayor?
I will second it.
Okay, second, and now it's open for discussion.
I will just say through the county, because I do sit at county, we've had a number of documents brought forward to us about transit around the county and up into Oxford County and down into Lambton County, because it kind of extends across all three. As I recall, there was a couple of different alternatives being examined, and I don't think we've got the final report on those yet. I think there's more to come, but stuff like ridership on demand, being subsidized, maybe running a bus doesn't work for everybody out in the country, so ridership on demand, that type of stuff is being examined. So I do believe it's being examined at the county level, and probably something will come up right shortly.
Okay,
I can go
let's-
back and look for more.
All right, well, let's have the vote, because I would like to get to the, if we can get to the manpower planning, but if you have, bring it to a vote. Any other questions? Okay. Vote on Councillor Wilsey's motion for a report on, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried.
And just a note on that, there was a timeline on that we received that before we decided on the budget. That was part of my motion that I made, so.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else on economic development? Deputy Mayor.
One quick question through you to Director Dakin. When we sell land, does it go into a reserve fund for economic land future needs? Or does it just go into a general fund?
So, industrial land that we own is carried obviously as an asset. What is recognized in the financial statements is the difference between carrying costs and the sale cost. So if we sell property for $1 million, $1 million doesn't flow into a reserve account or an income. It's recorded at the difference between the carrying cost and the sale price. So first and foremost, that's number one. Number two, we do have a land sale reserve that those funds flow into. But again, going back to my first comment, just because we sell a property for $1 million, we have to look at what we have it on the books at, and the difference between that is what the surplus, we'll call it, that goes into that account. So yeah, yes, we do have one, and that's.
Okay, we'll circle back. So we had a second motion to receive the multi-year budget for information. We've had a discussion. Vote on to receive it. All in favor of receiving? Oh, sorry.
You said multi-year budget?
Okay. I apologize. That's what it says, but you are correct, Councilor Richard.
Sorry,
It's
not.
typo. No, that's fine. That's good catch. So we're just receiving the 2024 budget. Good catch, Councilor. All in favor? Opposed, Benny? Carried. We'll fix that on tomorrow's agenda. Now we're going to discuss the 2024, wrong terminology, manpower planning, but first, motion to receive report HR 2024-03 for information. Motion, Councilor Brennan, seconder, need a second. Councilor Derbyshire. Okay, who's going to speak to this one? Director Payne is going to speak to us? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just a point of order. I think we should be using the term workforce or labor
Yes.
force. And I don't know if it requires a motion, but I would think that these documents should be altered so it says workforce or labor force as opposed to the less inclusive and arguably sexist term manpower.
Thank you for that one, the adjustment.
Thank you.
I was searching for the word. Director Payne?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Council. The report before you, we'll call it 2024 Workforce Planning, as Councilor Brennan indicated. So the report before you, background on it is back in January 18th, Council had requested additional information when we were doing operational review from the fire service. Council had asked for a detailed report regarding the contract FPO position, or fire prevention officer. So in that, building this report, some other matters have come up which have been also included, which talks about the bylaw contract position that we currently have as well. The reason for that coming on is the contract is coming up for expiry March 31st of this year. So what I've indicated in the reports, obviously the Deputy Chief and Director have provided lots of information. I'll quickly surmise each of those positions. So the first one for fire services, temporary fire prevention officer. Background on that is the last few years we've had a contract FPO. This is not the full-time FPO position. We have the contract FPO. The background on that is the spirit of the creation of that was to build our fire prevention program at the fire service, an education program, which they've been doing since that time. the request in the report from the fire service, and I'll turn over to the deputy chief to further explain, is to further extend that contract for another 2 years, to continue building the fire prevention and education program. In addition, we're currently recruiting a full-time fire prevention officer, which we posted. We're in the interviewing process right now. The idea is that contract FPO would also mentor the incoming candidate for the FPO position. So I'll leave it at that for FPO. I'll go into the building and bylaw and then welcome questions from council for either of those positions. Building and planning, as I indicated, director has indicated, we're in a contracted services recently with Southwest Middlesex, but that contract comes up for expiry as well, coming up in I think April, March 31st as well. And the request for that is to further extend that contract for 2 more years, to continue the service that we provide to Southwest Middlesex and the current service that the director provides to the community. Lots of information and data there, background on the different bylaws they're responsible for. So I'm happy to turn it over to council to ask any questions of the directors.
Okay. Let's deal with the FPO one first. Any questions to either Deputy Chief Beasley or Director Payne? Deputy Mayor.
Just a comment. In this municipality, we are fortunate to have the individual doing the temporary fire prevention inspection role, which is now proposed to become the chief fire prevention officer. So absolutely critical to our fire services and to the operation, the safe operation of our fire services in this community. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Derbyshire.
Thank you. I guess through you to, I'm gonna ask the CAO or maybe the deputy chief. Is this not a position that is offered through county on the inspection side of things? I believe that's what are we looking for, just a prevention officer? So is that, and then I guess if it's just prevention, I'd like to know what we're getting for kind of that, what exactly prevention is, and what my $168,000 is getting us for this.
I want to, you or I'll leave it to you.
Through the chair to Councilor Derbyshire, I will let the deputy chief speak to the specifics of the role. But in regards to again the services of what the county provides and what the municipality provides, I'm not aware of discussions that have happened with the county to date in regards to fire prevention officer. So that would be something that again is part of a service delivery review could be explored. But at this time, since I've been here, we've had no discussions with the county about providing this service.
Deputy Chief Beasley.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire. I believe historically the county did offer a fire prevention inspection service, but it was at the absolute bare bones minimum of requirements. Historically speaking, this situation that we're discussing now started as I was hired here. At that time, we had 2 individuals within the fire service here were acting as fire prevention officers within the municipality. The individual that we're discussing here was hired on to mentor those people and bring them up to a much higher standard of both prevention, inspection, public education and fire investigation standards. It was decided probably years later on that they were going to take on a full-time inspector. Again, this individual would then mentor that inspector. That position became vacant, and now we find ourselves in a situation where we're going to be refilling that position. The individual that is currently in this contract role is continuing to ensure that the high standards of fire prevention, investigation and inspection is maintained. and will then continue to mentor and bring the new hire up to a much level standard, because it must be understood that when you hire someone new, they're going to come in with relatively low qualifications. And if you've had the opportunity to read the document that I've put in the report, you'll see this individual that's in this position right now is extremely well qualified and extremely experienced. I will say to the $168,000, I believe that you referred to, Councillor Domsher, that refers to a full-time inspector and this individual as well. So it's not $168,000 for one individual.
Councillor Palmer.
So just for clarification, we have one fire prevention officer currently. How long have we had just one? And this will be a change then to two, is that correct?
Through the chair to you, Councillor Palmer. The individual that we're talking about has been a part-time contract employee for the last 2 years. Unfortunately, situations within the fire department is pointing back on as being the lone individual in the fire department, in the fire prevention division right now. We are, as the director alluded to, we're in the position of looking to hire another fire prevention inspector. So we'll end up with essentially 1.5, if you will. A full-time fire inspector and then a contract fire inspector as well. But that contract fire inspector is the one with all the experience that will mentor the new hire and bring them up to a higher level. And that's why the request is for 2 years, so as we've got that stability across that division for that particular time. At the end of 2 years, then that contract can be looked at that point.
Yeah, just can I interject just for clarification, then we'll come to Councillor Hippel. We did have this isn't a new, we did have a full-time fire FPO, correct? Just for
Through the chair to the chair, that is correct. Circumstances find it that we don't have that full-time
right,
position.
so we had the position, person left, now we're going to refill it. Sorry, Councillor Hippel.
Actually, no, that's what I was gonna say.
That's right. Any other comment? Councillor Derbyshire.
So it was my understanding, though, that she was just fire prevention. I don't think she was fire inspection. If I remember the hiring correctly, I could be wrong. But we are talking about fire inspection at this point, which I guess what I would ask is what, if we're already paying a levy to the county, why are we trying to take on more of our own to cost us more money when we already pay the county?
Deputy Chief.
Through the chair to Councillor Domsher. It's to ensure that we work with the building department and various other departments, that everybody's working under the same umbrella, and that the level of service that the county is providing will not meet the level of service that we are going to provide as a department. Both for not just the one prevention piece, is prevention inspection, which are kind of under the same umbrella anyway. To inspect something, you are going to, the outcome is to hopefully then prevent a situation occurring, and the public education piece is also a part of that.
Follow up. Councillor Hippel.
Yeah, just a quick one. I'm gonna go back and I'm trying to rack my brain here on this one. So the idea behind this, and I kind of came onto council when this was all going on. So the county used to do this, but like you called it bare bones, and I get that. And I can't, I'm trying to remember how that all transpired. But at the end of the day, because that they weren't able to provide the service because we had so many vulnerable occupancies in our municipality, and with all the industrial, with the large land that we have of industrial, that they couldn't keep up. Is that, I mean, again, I'm just trying to remember how this all transpired, so I'm asking if this is how this happened. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just see, sorry, Deputy Chief, I see Councillor, sorry for the demotion.
Thank you, chairs. So just building on top of Councillor Hippel. So back in 2022, just to give you some background. So back in 2022 fall, we created the fire prevention officer full-time position. We recruited in the fall of 2022. We hired a contract in 2023. That position did not work out for the candidate, so we've reposted it. Okay. Okay, so that's the background on the position. When Chief George was here, so the reason for creating that FPO position, the full-time, was exactly what Councillor Hippel just said. At the time, the county was providing minimal service. They couldn't keep up to the industry in Strathroy-Caradoc. They couldn't keep up to the vulnerable occupancies that require the inspections and what have you. So that's what drove the need for the position, because the county at that time couldn't keep up to it. So then after that time, I don't know what the county does for other municipalities, but they couldn't keep up to our need and our growing community. So that was the driver of the full-time position, and they took over.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Councilor Derbyshire, yep.
I guess my comment will be, we're gonna fill the fire prevention officer, because obviously that's a position and nobody's gonna get out of it. I think what you have to look at is, our fire protection service is now creeping up to a portion of total tax collected. For a service that, I don't wanna downplay what you do, thank you for your service, but 23 fires a year. We do far more training, far more this. I just think we have to look at our cost of what things are at this moment. Heck, when housing and everything booms back again, by all means, look at these positions. But when we are already paying money for this position, why we're not reaching out to the county and saying, I don't know where we're at now, can you actually service us? Will you be able to cover this, and what is the cost? And that would be more of a cost comparison for the inspector. The fire prevention officer, if we feel that we need that position to go out and tell people not to have fires or smoke alarms, or we used to do it when I was on the force. We did it as the fire department went into buildings, talked to the people, handed out smoke alarms. We went to the schools as the volunteers. We did that. It was community engagement too. We didn't have full-time people. That's how a smaller municipality with tax dollars that are already stretched to the max can utilize this and make an opportunity for community engagement, as opposed to, here's a full-time person that doesn't see people, just is there. It's just a position. But to me, I think we should look at what the county can offer. If they can't supply it, if they say, no, we can't do it, then it's out of the question. But we're already paying that levy. So to not look at it is, I don't know, a bit of an oversight.
Comments, questions? Deputy Mayor.
I guess it'd be through you to probably Director Huff, because of building and planning and our CBO role. So in my discussions with the chief and kind of understanding what's going on with the chief fire prevention officer role, is that role works hand in hand with the chief building official to review a number of major developments going on in town that otherwise we wouldn't be able to process because there's nobody else qualified to do that. I'm thinking major industrial, vulnerable sector. I believe vulnerable sector requires at least yearly inspections. So that's the role of the chief fire prevention officer, very specialized, and works hand in hand with your department to facilitate a lot of our industrial and I guess kind of our high density housing, such as some of the subdivisions that we've seen where we're discussing the width of roads and placement of fire hydrants and stuff. That gentleman currently is the one that does all of that, and that was never offered previously by the gentlemen that were the fire inspectors with the county. Am I correct on that? Or did I say way too much?
Director Hoff.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor. So I can speak to what happens today, and certainly the CBO is in, I would say, almost daily consultation with the fire prevention officer / inspector, and it's very much exactly as you had discussed it. So we get either site plan applications or building permits in. It does require there to be a review from the fire department's perspective. For instance, if you have a very large industrial building that has the use of and storage of a number of volatile chemicals, then the fire department has to be aware of that, have a prevention plan in place, as well as to make sure that they have the right equipment on hand to deal with, for instance, those chemicals. Same with multi-unit or site plan applications. It's very important that there be constant connection between the two parties.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Wilsey.
I'm gonna just ask if maybe we're asking the wrong question. If we're hiring a full-time chief fire prevention officer, and that full-time person that we're hiring, who is supposed to be qualified to have that position, needs us to hire a second person to make sure they can do their job, are we even hiring the right person? I think we're asking the wrong question when we talk about hiring the temporary one. I think we either need to get one position that can do both, or stick with just our temporary. I don't think we need, we're a small municipality. We don't need 1.5 people to do fire inspection.
Thank
We
you
just
for
don't
the
have that
question.
many bills.
I was wondering the same thing, Councillor Wilsey. If you hire somebody, you would expect them to be qualified and build a position. If you need somebody on an interim basis for 6 months, but Director Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Wilsey, great question. We've discussed that exclusively. In today's market for labor, I'll just ballpark this. A full-time fire inspector in other municipalities are looking at $130,000 to $140,000 a year salary. This position's not there. We don't have the budget for that. This current budget sits in the, I want to say job rate is about $92,000 job rate. There's 6 steps to get to there. So the thought process behind that was, can we pay a little, because we can't compete against the bigger municipalities for FPOs. Can we bring somebody in at our wage band and use a seasoned part-time person to get them up to a standard that's acceptable and meets our needs of the community? So that was the driver of that. You're right, in a perfect world, if we could post for a $92,000 job and get a fully seasoned, we just won't get it. If I look at the last 2 postings we've done over the last 2 or 3 years, or 2 years, sorry, I look at the caliber of candidates, not taking away from the other seasoned, experienced FPOs, we're just not getting them because they're not moving for the compensation that we offer.
One more, then we'll go to the next one. I can accept that. Councillor Wilsey.
That same one, then why don't we cancel the full-time and we just stick with our temporary? What's the option to stopping us from do that? That seems like a better way to go if we can't get a qualified person and we have to train them for 2 years. If we're spending, you say the band is 130, we're spending 170. Like, we're already spending more. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, Deputy Chief.
Sorry, through the chair, Councillor Wilsey. As far as salary, I can't answer what people earn. I think that the number we spoke of earlier, I think it's in one of the reports, is the 160. I believe that overstates it. I don't think it is that much. But I can't speak to what people earn. I think what I will speak to is what the director says. Unfortunately, the caliber of candidate for the salary being offered, and it's just to reflect on what you said, absolutely, is we're getting people that are coming out of school and they have the qualification, but they don't have they have the accreditation, but not necessarily the qualification, because they don't have the experience, and you've got to start somewhere. The fortunate position we're in right now is that we have a highly qualified individual that can give us 2 days a week of his time. And I've heard it said a couple of times here, in what is, yes, you could argue it's a comparatively small community, but it's a small community that is certainly expanding, certainly in the north end of the community here, and there's a desire for that to occur. To have someone with that expertise on hand to assist and ensure that we can home grow our own fire prevention inspector, and if in 2 years' time, then or a year's time, there's no need for that contract person to be there, then it's a contract situation, and it's something that can be easily discussed. So that would be the one thing that I say. Yes, it is a small community, but it's a community that is growing, and by the fact that we've got no more land to put businesses on that want to come here. So that I would argue, mention that. And again, the fire prevention piece, it is a vital part of the service that the municipality provides. The Fire Prevention Act says that you must have a fire prevention and education policy as a municipality, and one of our governing regulations, NFPA 1730, actually recommends one fire prevention inspector per 10,000 of population. Now, do with that what you will, but that's the industry standard. We're looking at potentially 1.5, not even quite 1.5, but with that half being highly educated, qualified, experienced, the multifaceted role that this is.
Councillor Derbyshire had his hand, then Deputy Mayor Coe, then we'll wrap this. Councillor Derbyshire.
Thank you. I'm just gonna go through you to council. We have 2 full-time employees already, right? We have a fire chief and we have a deputy chief. I don't want to get into here a debate about what their roles are and what their roles aren't, but we already hire 2 people. I would think between those 2 people, we have enough qualifications for someone to be working with Director Huff and someone else to possibly be working on some of the other things. Otherwise, I'm not really too sure what our other 2 full-time employees are doing if we have to keep hiring more people to cover off what these things are. I would think our fire chief should be the one that actually goes through with building and planning and does this, but I could be very much wrong, and maybe he's not qualified for that. So at this point, maybe we need to look at making sure when we hire people for full-time positions in a small town, you have a tool belt full of things, not just one thing.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Brennan, then we'll wrap this one up.
Fully appreciate everything everybody is saying. I personally believe that the CFPO position is the one that we need because of the individual that's currently holding that. So it's essentially like a permanent part-time 2-year contract position. I'm aware of what that person does. I've worked with that person in the past. I spoke extensively with Chief Smith about this person over the last 6 months. That's not a position we can afford to lose at this point in time. I think if council is not comfortable moving forward on the other position, we have soon, I hope, a Strathroy-Caradoc Fire Services Advisory Committee, and by keeping in this highly qualified person that we continuously refer to, this could be job 1 or 2 of our new committee to bring back a recommendation to this council about a permanent fire prevention officer, and start it at the committee, let them do the heavy lifting, and bring a report back here, if that's how we choose to move the motion.
Councillor Brennan, then this one.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify then, essentially this sounds to me like a succession planning strategy where the attempt is to retain for 2 years a highly qualified individual who has a great deal of institutional knowledge and field experience, and have that person, to some extent, if you will, kind of job shadow a new recruit who will then get experience for those 2 years. And that institutional knowledge that is so valuable in our community, that experience will be then transferred to the new person, and that this is a strategy that is being contemplated in order to keep all that institutional knowledge in the community and to basically make our community more safe. And now that's through the chair to the deputy chief. Is that essentially a correct statement?
Yeah, through to Councillor Brennan, that's exactly right.
Safety's the winner.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the other next one to move to is the bylaw officer. Did you want to speak to that, Director Hawkins?
Thank you, Chair. So I think Director Payne covered off most of the details. I would just again highlight that the municipality has continued to see a significant rise in bylaw enforcement requests for action. And so when it first started increasing, we thought, you know, maybe it was related to COVID, but it does seem to continue to carry on. And so the notion is, again, to extend the contract for another 2 years to, again, assess where we are. And again, it's also related to the service contract that we have with Southwest Middlesex. It actually extends to November 30th of this year, 2024. And based on correspondence with Southwest Middlesex CAO, they seem very happy with the work that we've done for them, and they anticipate renewing that contract for another 2 years. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Wilsey.
Just reading the report, I have one clarification before I ask my question. The 121 occurrences that we had in Southwest Middlesex, are they part of the 610 or they're in addition to the 610? I do have a follow-up. I just want that information first.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, it's in addition to 600.
Okay. So on that, if we can do 121 in a day and drive to a different municipality, why do we need 2 inspectors to do 4 times as many? That would be 10 work days and per week. And in 1 work day, if we can do 121, why do we need 9 work days to do 600? It works down to about 2 occurrences per day. And so if there's 2 occurrences per day, why do we need 2 people to do that?
Director Hoff.
Thank you. So bylaw staff don't just respond to an email that has a complaint about, say, grass cutting. They'll have to attend the site, drive to wherever it is. They have to input into the system whether or not it's a legit complaint or not. If it is not, if it is a legit complaint, they have to do up the paperwork for notices. Then they have to follow up with the owner on notices. And if there's non-compliance, then there is a proceeding for an order and potentially court duties. And I will say these are discrete occurrences. So you can have, say in Southwest Middlesex, that's 121 occurrences they dealt with over a year, but that is one property owner, like by property. So on one property, they can have multiple occurrences. So what is tracked is just the individual properties that we have an issue with, not necessarily how many times we have to go onto the site. So yes, there can be just 2 or 3 occurrences, and I can tell you that it can just take one occurrence to take up all day of staff time for 2 members dealing with, depending on the nature of the occurrence and the amount of work that is required to deal with it.
As a follow-up,
Yep.
yeah, like our municipality only takes half an hour to drive from one side to the other. Like, I don't see why we couldn't do more than, like, it's 2 a day for it. And even if you have to investigate 5 or 6 or 7 in a day, like if they're all in Mount Bridges, you could do that in a morning. Residents aren't always gonna be home. We only work 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, or whatever the typical office hours are. Most people aren't home during those hours. There's maybe staff involvement, but it's, I really don't, with looking at these, if we can do 120 in 1 day with 1 person, I don't see why we need 2 people. So I would say we probably don't need the second bylaw officer.
Any other comments? Councillor Derbyshire, then Deputy Mayor McGuire.
All right, I'm gonna make a comment in general. I look around at all the budgets that are being done by other municipalities and what they're kind of going through and what they're looking at and what they're doing. A lot of them are reducing their staff. I look at ours, we're adding. We just keep adding. We keep adding staff, which if that's what we want to do, that's fine. Just remember, that's a tax increase. Like, we can keep doing that, but other municipalities are looking to try to, you know, sit tight, at least hold down the fort, work our way through this and get, you know, try to stay under double-digit tax rates. But I don't know, it just feels like we just keep moving as if the storm's not coming or never going to. And if that's how we feel, then I don't know, I guess I'd like a little more reassurance that we are in great shape and we should be hiring more people.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just make the comment. I see that some of their role includes updating bylaws, new bylaws to allow the municipality to ensure community standards are maintained. Bylaw officers have been working on updating these bylaws as time allows. I'm not really sure that that should be a bylaw officer role. That is an administrative function. That's not an enforcement function, so I'll just make that comment.
Yeah, we'll go, Councillor Hippel and Councillor Brennan.
Just a quick question, actually, and I think it's to you, please, to the mayor. I'm wondering, is it possible, because I was looking at the, I'm having issues with my iPad, so if I look like I'm doing this, it's not working well for me right now. Is there a way that the recommendation that we could split it into two? Like, could we do the FBO separate as to the bylaw?
Somebody just needs to make a motion.
Okay, well, I would like to make that.
Okay, then we'll go to Councillor Brennan. Yep.
And I will second that. That was the point I was going to ask for. So I will second the motion to split the vote on the two positions.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that it seems to me that both these positions, when I look at them, are really related to growth. And I think that we have to keep that in mind, the growth that has happened. And I agree with Councillor Wilsey, like, in your breakdown of time. However, we have somebody going between Mount Bridges and Strathroy and Southwest Middlesex. So, that could be pretty time consuming. And not to mention that whenever in the downtown area I've needed a bylaw officer, it doesn't help me if he comes out in 4 days, generally, because the things that we want to be dealt with are quite timely, and sometimes it's a matter of, in the case of downtown, somebody putting garbage, physically in the act of putting out garbage from an apartment, like, couches and materials, construction materials beside a bin. And if the bylaw officer doesn't come when we call them, there's nobody to charge. We can't determine who put all that crap by the bin that the municipality then has to pay to get picked up and removed. So there is some timeliness to that position. Anyway, that was just my reflection. I just wanted to share. I feel like that both of these are growth, and if the guideline is 1 per 10,000, 1.5 actually puts us under. So I think we have to keep that in mind too.
Deal with the motions, and we have a second motion to split the two positions out. So could we have a vote on that motion? All in favor of splitting the two positions? Opposed, if any? Carried. Okay, first we'll take the vote on the position of fire prevention officer. All in favor of fire prevention officer? Need a motion? Ah, sorry, that one did. Okay. Motion to approve the fire prevention officer.
The vote,
The vote, yeah.
the two positions.
Yeah.
You'll need a mover and a seconder.
Need a mover and a seconder to vote on the fire prevention officer. We just voted to split the two out. Now we need a vote on the individual position. So we're looking for a motion to approve the FPO position.
I just want to say, I just want to know, we've talked about two positions in the fire, just alone, two positions. Is that what we're voting on, or are we voting on the one position and then the other position?
1.5.
1.5, correct?
So the two positions, the one full-time position and the contract.
Just 1 sec for clarification. We're just,
One position's already there.
right, we're just voting on the contract position.
Okay, thank you.
Just the
So thank
contract
you.
position.
Thank you.
So a motion to.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Hippel. Any further discussion on that? Councillor Derbyshire.
What's the contractor costing us for 2 years?
Do we have that number?
Bill, do you have the fire contract, the part-time perhaps?
No,
I don't have the fire.
I don't have that number in front of me. I do have it at my desk, but I don't have it here.
Okay.
On the report, it's got the total, but that's for the full-time and the part-time.
Right.
Can I make a motion that we He's got it, the number in his office. Until we actually know what the cost is, the temporary person, can we defer this to the next finance meeting to vote on that one?
Yeah,
There's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, I'm making a motion.
to defer, you can make a motion to defer, correct?
I'd like to make a motion to defer this until we actually know the cost of what.
If I understand correct, motion to defer can happen, is that correct, clerk? So we have a motion to defer. Second motion to defer, Councillor Derbyshire. No discussion on a motion to defer, correct? I don't think so.
Is that tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Okay.
All in favor of the motion to defer? Carried. Second motion we need is to accept the part-time, the contract by law enforcement officer. Someone to bring that motion. Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Hammer. Any further discussion? Okay. Deputy Mayor.
I would ask for a friendly amendment. The motion is for 2 years. I would ask for a friendly amendment to 1 year, and then we can deal with it in the multi-year budget following whatever decision. Because we're doing that service review at the same time. So we got a whole bunch of balls in the air again, and extending this out over 2 years. Maybe a different conversation in 12 months or 9 months.
Seconder, do you have a seconder on your motion? Pardon me?
The mover and seconder just have
It's
to.
a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment, I apologize.
So you ask,
Right, anybody agree?
I would agree to the friendly amendment.
Yes. You would, okay. Okay, any other further discussion? All in favor of the amended motion? Carried. Opposed, if any? Carried. We got through that. So the next meeting is tomorrow night at 3 o'clock. Motion to adjourn. Yeah, sorry.
Clarification, so the vote on the fire position will take place in tomorrow's finance
Tomorrow.
committee meeting? So that will be on the agenda?
Yes,
Thank you.
we'll have it on the agenda.
We still have the original vote to receive the report for information, which we have the mover and the seconder, but we just need to do the vote.
Okay, sorry, we had a second motion to receive the report. All in favor of receiving the report? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Clerk? Motion to adjourn. Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Hippel. All in favor? Carried.